Russell Wilson. Speculation surrounding the Seattle Seahawks quarterback ramped up this week. Previously reported that Wilson expressed frustration after the season over all the hits that he's taken, stated his desire for more say in personnel decisions. Multiple sources confirmed that Wilson stormed out of a meeting with Seahawks coaches last season as a result of his suggestions for fixing the team's offense were dismissed. This, according to The Athletic. He has not demanded a trade, his agent Mark Rodgers told Adam Schefter, who went on to say that Wilson has told the Seahawks he wants to stay and play in Seattle, but if a trade were considered, the only teams he would go to are the Dallas Cowboys, New Orleans Saints, Las Vegas Raiders, and Chicago Bears. So, guys, the thoughts on the latest from Russell Wilson's frustration in Seattle?
I think it's been a little bit overblown, and of course we have to discuss it when it's a premier quarterback like Russell Wilson and some sort of controversy surrounding him and the team. But I think it's becoming more and more common throughout football, throughout sports in general, where there are just kind of not eye to eye, level to level understandings of the power structure within an organization, especially when it's not one that's tried and true, like, you know, some of the premier organizations we talk about in these sports. So I don't think this is going to wind up with Russell Wilson in a different uniform. So that's why I say it's overblown. That's why I say I don't make too much of it. Do they need to figure something out? Do they need to appease their star quarterback? Sure, because as the Seahawks go, Russell Wilson goes, and vice versa. He's going to be the engine behind whatever they do in the coming season. So I do think it's something that needs to be ironed out. If it means a sacrificial lamb being Pete Carroll, I'm all for that. I think that was a convenient take on Twitter this week, that you go by the coach if it means keeping Russell Wilson happy and keeping really the engine running. So I think there are things that need to be achieved in order to subside this, but I do not make much of it because I think we're seeing it more and more in the modern era of sports, regardless if we're talking about the National Football League.
I think it's interesting because if you look at the top 3 most sacked quarterbacks last year, one of them has already been traded, Carson Wentz going to Indianapolis. Another is likely to be traded, refusing to play for his team. Basically, that's Deshaun Watson. And the third is Russell Wilson. And that's where we are right now. And it's a weird trade fit because if you look at those 4 teams, the best pick Seattle could get out of this is number 10. Now, let's keep in mind, Seattle does not have a first-round pick either this year's draft or next year's draft. That's part of the problem because they've traded away some of that capital. A lot of that was the Jamal Adams trade, so, hey, I don't mind. But I will say that it's an odd trade scenario because there is not an obvious partner here for the Seahawks. If they were,
I don't think it's going to happen. There is no ideal partner, and also there's no ideal outcome for the Seahawks because you got to pick. Hooray! Let's throw a parade. But what are you doing at that quarterback position?
Yeah, I agree. I will say if it were to happen, this is the way I think it would, and I have to credit Bucky Brooks from NFL Network. I was listening to his podcast with Daniel Jeremiah the other day. And if you look at the 4 teams that Russell Wilson is reportedly willing to go to, one of them has a quarterback who plays the way Pete Carroll wants to play. Ball control, good decisions, don't turn it over. That's Derek Carr. And if the Raiders were interested in making a splashy move with owner Mark Davis, with Coach John Gruden, it would be something to the order of go out, get Russell Wilson, trade Derek Carr to Seattle because he's not going to be your quarterback anymore if you're making that move, and see if you can compete in the AFC West. Now, I don't think that would be enough to get that done, but he would be playing behind a better offensive line. I think that's a lot of the issue here, where he's just back there running for his life. But I will say this, there is blame to be had on both sides here because Russell Wilson, since the Seahawks, quote unquote, started letting him cook in 2015, have not been to the NFC Championship game. And as
is
much
that
as
his doing though?
It's not entirely his doing. It isn't entirely his doing, but let's keep in mind, they won the Super Bowl with Wilson on his rookie contract. Since he got the extension, they just have not, they have not had that same level of success. And granted, the offensive line has been poor. They haven't had as much success in the running game. I get that. But at the same time, he's got weapons. He's got DK Metcalf. He has Tyler Lockett. So I do think there's a little bit of blame to be had on both sides. I'm always a little more inclined to blame management here, but I do think Russell Wilson does share some of that burden in terms of why the Seahawks have not been more successful.
And Nick, I'll pose this to you. I don't see a scenario where it looks good for Seattle if you're going to side with Pete Carroll in any way, shape, or form here, because I don't think it's his doing that they haven't been to a Super Bowl since then. So if we're going to look at it objectively, if you end up trading Russell Wilson and you wind up with a Derek Carr and you leave Pete Carroll in complete command, which seems to be what the reports would indicate, that is a recipe for disaster. You're not leading your organization in any positive direction in that situation. Now, if you keep Russell Wilson and you let Pete Carroll do his thing, is that good enough? Because clearly he hasn't been surrounded with enough. You mentioned the offensive line where he can thrive and let his MVP caliber production lead his team to the promised land. So where do you win here by siding with Pete Carroll?
I don't know that you can win if you're siding with Pete Carroll. It would be tough. And when you look at the landscape of sports and the various divorces from star players and management and head coaches, for example, very rarely does the head coach or the infrastructure that the star player is leaving still succeed after that player has left. If it's Brady Belichick, if it's Kawhi and Greg Popovich, if it's Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. So I think that is something to keep in mind, that you're not going to win if you're Seattle and you're getting rid of Russell Wilson. That's not where they want to live. But I think the power structure is really important. And that goes for Seattle, that goes for Vegas as a potential trade destination. I think they would probably be the most likely place that could pull off a deal like that, because you'd have to be moving massive assets and be getting rid of Derek Carr, where, okay, Seattle might be able to make a move or justify making the move by getting the quarterback back. And Las Vegas has a structure in place where John Gruden has all the power. So he is someone who has the staying power, the longevity for a move like that to be made. And I think that Pete Carroll has almost been given the keys to the kingdom in a similar way. We were talking about this before the show, but a lot of the issues have stemmed from new ownership in the transition from Paul Allen, who has passed away in recent years, and his sister now running the team. And now Pete Carroll, in essence, because of less of an input from ownership, is running wild with the football operation as someone who was hired much in the same way as Urban Meyer to get him from USC. They had to give him a lot of power. And now he is really exercising that influence throughout the entire organization, which has stemmed some of the frustration for Russell Wilson. But I just don't know a scenario. I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think you can do that. And Wilson has not put his foot down enough, has not been enough of an issue where I think they could legitimately move on. So when you see Deshaun Watson, who we're going to get to in a second, that to me is more of a situation where he is forcing his team's hand. I don't expect the same situation to occur with Russell Wilson. When he says, I would like to play in Seattle, but these are the options I would consider, I don't expect him to be on the move